offer the best grooming products for you. Guests are natural and handcrafted too. We wanna help be your swagger, your style, class, and luxury. We make our products tailor-made for you with high quality. Yeah, so get in style with the black, yeah. Grooming company, to give you swagger, style, class, and luxury. In luxury, yeah. Black gentleman, yeah. Company, give you swagger, style, class, and luxury. In luxury, yeah.
Located at www.theblackgent.com.
Yo. What's good? It's Stormy B-Man, and I am back. Welcoming you to Nerds on Culture with Stormy B-Man for this Monday, August 18th, 2025. This is number 131 in the series of Nerds broadcasts, and tonight we are featuring a selection in the independent film aisle category, one might say, a film by the title One Night Stand from 1997, starring Wesley Snipes and Robert Downey Jr., Natasha Kinski, and Ming-Na Wen. All of these people were just on the cusp of their fame, some already initiated into their fame. As Wesley, we would know him to go forward as Nino Brown in New Jack City and other films like, what was it? I'm trying to think of the Spike Lee joint. Help me out there, Drew.
Which one?
Spike Lee, because that came right after New Jack City.
You talking about Jungle Fever?
Jungle Fever. There we go. Forgive me, man. I had a brain fart right at the moment when I wanted to say the title of the film. And then, of course, we came to know Wesley as Blade. Huh? Blade is something of an enigma. We've talked about it on this show. But Wesley Snipes really had a great run in the 90s, man, where he was both romantic, heroic, villainous in roles across the board. And Robert Downey Jr., talents known with no bounds, but also known for issues outside of his profession. And to see him bounce back as he's been able to do is quite an amazing thing, so that we acknowledge that there are not all who can get that second chance. Proverbial, we're supposed to be the land of opportunity and second chances, but we won't dwell in that area. That's for another show. But this film is a bit different. And as I presented it to my partner in crime, Drew Titan, I told him, I said, I wanted to talk about this film because I just got an inspiration to recall it and decided to revisit it on my own, and found it to be one of the reasons why I like cinema. The film was directed by Mike Figgis, and as I stated, the actors who participated in this elevated the story, because the story is a bit odd. If you haven't seen this film, we highly recommend it to you, because it is a social construct that is kind of even ahead of its time for 1997, but much more relatable even today with our social issues with relationships. So with that being said, allow me to welcome my partner in crime to the show, Drew Titan. What's happening, man?
Alive and well, brother. Alive and well. And here we are. Another Monday, another Nerds on Culture. And I like this topic. I had to rewatch it yesterday because I haven't seen it in a couple of decades. And when you revisit it, you're like, wow, man. Wow, this was really, it's really a, it's one of those movies where it was like a long soap opera that I was actually interested in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When the film started, he was actually breaking the fourth wall.
Right.
And I thought when I first saw it, I thought the whole film was going to be like that. But it's a very simple film. It's not too long, y'all. So for those of you with ADD, it's not too long. But it's a solid story. And little bit of a surprise at the end. But it all works out, man. So, satisfied.
Let's touch on that fourth wall situation that you mentioned, because I thought that for a film of this nature and story to be told, it was interesting that they went with that, because it's Wesley who the story follows, and he's narrating the story. He introduces himself to the viewing audience as he's arriving in New York to catch up with a friend, and he's explaining along the way, so it kind of like catches you up. We've seen films do this in a different way. Star Wars stories had the opening scroll.
Yes.
And you read that scroll and get caught up on where the story is taking you and where it's come from and what's happening present. And so with Wesley doing that in the film's inception, what happens is you're brought up to speed right away, who he is, what he's about, where he's going, and it picks up kind of fast pace from there. It turns out that he's the
director. He's a director of some sorts.
Yeah, he was in advertising.
Advertising, yes.
Yeah, and he was a co-creator and director and everything of that sort. And his talents took him from New York to LA. where
Right.
he established himself there professionally and started a family. He married an Asian woman, and they had 2 children. Ming Na Wah is playing the wife. If you all don't remember her, she's from Agents of Shield, you know, and she got real popular on Agents of Shield, by the way, and she was also in the Street Fighter movie.
She
You
was.
know,
She was.
yeah. So, but this was very early in her career, so you get to see a little bit more of Ming Na Wah than you may have thought you would have ever seen. So, some of you pervs out there,
And she's what, a couple of decades younger in this film too?
yeah, man, quite perky, as they say. Yeah, but anyway, but yeah. So the story. You know, Storm, you got to go there sometime. But anyway, yeah. But yeah. So Wesley returns to New York to catch up with a friend of his, played by Robert Downey Jr. Now, what's really interesting about their friendship is that they were homeboys. You know, they were like down, and you know, people can have friendships and everything, but in this instance, Wesley, best friend, played by Robert Downey Jr. Wesley's playing a character named Max,
Right.
And he's going to visit his friend Charlie. Now, Charlie is gay, and played by Robert Downey Jr. And the whole thing is they were very close, and there was something going on with the dynamic of their friendship, because though Wesley lets you know right away, he was like, I'm not gay,
Right.
which he's not putting down gay people or anything, but he's trying to make a clear point, though, that you could still be friends with people who have a different choice in their lifestyles than you may have. And so with that being said, you understand that they had a falling out the last time they've seen one another, and it's been 5 years. And Charlie is a little bit miffed that Max picked up and moved to LA, and they hadn't spoken and everything, but he's in town because he's in town for business. And he hit him up and he said, we'll see how it goes, because that was his way of initiating the story. When you first meet Charlie, you see him in his element. He's a bit of a, I guess, a stage performer,
Choreographer or something.
choreographer,
Yeah.
and in New York, you know, there are plenty of stage plays and productions and stuff like that. So that was his thing, and he was thriving in that element. They get caught up, and there's still a little bit of tension there with Charlie, because as the film plays out, and it's not a hidden thing, but it's an understood thing, that Charlie loved Max a little bit more than he should have, because he, you know, his choice of his living arrangements and lifestyle. But Max was the kind of guy that he could still be his friend, but he's like, man, you know, I ain't like that. I don't get down like that. So, you know, quit bugging. And that was something that I thought was well played between these two men, because they are very, very good actors. Drew, your thoughts about that dynamic and how I'm trying to articulate it without being too,
yeah.
you know.
I think that was the director's way of cutting to the chase. What I got from that was, you know, when I watch films, I'm like, well, and it's like what I call a crossroad in explaining the protagonists in the films. I don't think the director wanted to leave us hanging. Well, is he or isn't he? Although there was a scene where they were directing a commercial, and when they were at brunch or dinner or what that was, he had that back and forth with the other gentleman, the white guy.
Mm-hmm.
And the question came up, have you ever kissed a man? And the white guy was like, no, because he had made a comment about that community before they were called LGBTQ. This is 97, y'all.
Yes.
This was just called the gay community. That's what they were called. And then he asked Wesley's character, have you? And he said yes. But I think if you watch the scene, I think he was trolling, which wasn't a term they used back then.
Yes.
I think it was more or less he didn't like that dude. And you didn't see him past that scene, by the way. He just didn't like that guy. They had a meeting and these guys was trying to market pickles. And he was like, what the fuck? It was a thing. So he really didn't like that guy. So I think he was trolling him. But they let you know that he had a wife. He was completely heterosexual, completely.
And not only that, with that meeting and everything, because they were out of town, and as they were wrapping things up, because he was dealing with colleagues of various sexes, and there were women involved in their group of workers, and you could see that Wesley's position was coveted, and the women were kind of like playing up to him somewhat, and there was even one who was trying to come on to him. Remember
when he went to the room,
when he was going back to this hotel room?
Yeah.
And he was saying goodnight to her because she was basically walking him to his room.
Oh yeah.
And she was one of those, like, how would we describe them up today? Because she was an aggressive woman.
She wow, there's a title for her, right? That type of woman. She I don't recall her look. Let's call her a suitor.
Yeah.
Like,
and she tells him, because he's like, have a good night, and she was like, I could come in.
I could come in and make you have a better night.
Basically telling him, I want you, but she didn't say it like that, and she didn't carry herself like that.
Right.
You can almost get a thing where she might have been, and forgive me, because this movie is covering something, like I said, it's a little bit ahead of its time.
Yeah.
In today's culture, she would be one of those that you could figure she goes both ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you remember how she was dressed with a sport jacket and everything, there was some subtleties about her that said that, is she, like this, or is she like that? But when she said, oh, I could come in, and Wesley was like,
he was like, what?
Have a good night, baby.
All right, have a good night. Yeah.
Plus it also established his character being a married man and having a family at home. In other words, he wasn't out there for thrills. He was out there for his work and everything, which really sets us up for what happens, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, it did. So a little bit after that, he meets this woman, and everything was in a social setting. It was involving business. He meets this woman, and you can tell there's like an immediate connection to a degree. But both of them were kind of like standoffish, like, am I really feeling this? What's going on? To cut to the chase, they end up going to an orchestra. Then we're going to like an orchestra to listen to some music, like some Beethoven type stuff. And the film work was actually it was damn good, actually, because there were moments where he's watching the fella play his violin, and the woman just like zones out and she's like looking at him. So of course there's an initial attraction. So they leave. Now, this is where the writing gets incredible here. Would you agree that sometimes tragedy could make people trauma bond?
Yes.
Okay. And I always looked at this film and I said, you know, the reason why the writer put this here, it was to solidify why things happened later. So the scene came where they were walking through Manhattan. And of course, it's in my city, so I can relate to certain things. And one thing I will say is where that happened, this scene, it wouldn't have happened there. You know, in fact, Stormy, that parking lot is still there. It's a parking lot, and it's well lit. And what happened was they were walking through the parking lot, and another couple was walking through the parking lot. They weren't dressed as bums. They just looked like they were out drinking, and they had one guy had on like a sports jacket, a white shirt, and some khakis on, and the woman, you know, was wearing something matching, and all she did was ask the white woman that was with Wesley's character for a light. So she leans over to give her a light, pulls out a knife, and it's a robbery. So she yokes her up. The other guy yokes up Wesley, has a knife to his throat, and he's telling the lady, be easy with her, be easy with her. And of course the woman's panicking, and you know, Wesley has a blade moment. He fights the dude off, beats their ass, and they go off running, right? So of course the woman is shaken up. Now, when I'm watching the film, I'm like, that right there. She's vulnerable. She's not used to this, right? And she didn't know how to deal with it. She didn't know how to deal with it. And they walked past some police officers. He says, yo, we could report it right now. And she said, no. Let's just go. So, of course, they end up back at the place where he was staying. And there were 2 beds. And she fell asleep in one and he fell asleep in the other. She kept having nightmares. And she woke up and he went over to her bed to console her. And then that's where things escalated. And that little bit right there, because when she was sleeping, they kept flashing back to the other woman that held a knife to her throat. That's the director letting you know, okay, she needs some comforting. And they went through a situation together. This is the trauma bonding they're having right now. So that just enables the relationship to a greater degree. So it was very clever writing and clever directing. And it makes you wonder, you know, and I love movies like this because it makes you wonder, if that little incident didn't happen, would they have gotten that close? Who knows? You know, but
if they did, it would have been kind of fake.
Yeah.
Because you can see someone and they be attractive or whatever, but because you live your life and they live their life, you still have a certain regard for what your personal reality is.
Right.
But under the auspice of what took place, yes, I agree that it was something, and you termed it perfectly, the trauma bonding. That was something that it brought them closer, and for lack of a different term, it wasn't innocent, but it wasn't intentional, you know? And I think that's about as direct as I could say that, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because what transpired still transpired.
Right.
You know. But it's a lot different from just diving in, you know, sort of like in the earlier film that he starred in, Jungle Fever, you know.
Right.
That was a case of, remember that song, Are You Curious? And you dive in. That was totally different than what transpired here. Plus, they both were upscale people with lifestyles that vetted them, you know, certain amenities and luxuries and things like that. So they had self-respect. You know, Wesley showed it when he was, you know, amongst his colleagues. With her, to a smaller degree, you saw it when she was with hers, but it was still a little bit of mystery about what did she actually do, which they did later reveal what she did. And it was almost a humorous line when they asked her about what she did, and she basically said, I'm a rocket scientist.
I'm a rocket scientist. Well, it was funny because the wife looks at her and says, what the is she being a smart ass? But it turns out she really was.
She really was, yeah.
She really was. It was funny. That was funny. I was like, oh. But you see, that's one of those things where you put yourself in. Again, when you watch movies, don't you put yourself in those situations like, man, if I was in this situation, what would I have done? What would my wife have said? You understand what I'm saying? And when she said that, I looked at it and said, oh, shoot, what is she trying to do here? But no, she really was a rocket scientist. You know what I mean? Because, you know, at first, Wesley's wife looks at her and says, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? Is she being sarcastic? Why is she doing that to me? What's up with y'all? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, man, that was funny. I was like, ooh, why'd she do that? Turns out that's really her occupation. That was hilarious.
Yeah, this is an image of Robert Downey Jr. as Charlie in the scene where he and Max meet up when Max first arrives in New York. The whole thing with Max, and Natasha Kinski's character, she's playing a woman named Karen.
Oh, wow.
But it was very interesting. She was a professional, and before the trauma situation, he had a situation where he was leaving and about to go back home to California, LA. And he was sitting waiting on his flight and everything, and Karen noticed him again in passing, and she tells him, you've got a black heart. And he was like, what? You know, and he was thinking she was saying something snide to him at that moment, but his pen had leaked through his shirt pocket onto his shirt, and it left a real big black ink spot on his shirt. So he was like, oh, and she pointed that out, and he was trying to figure out how he was going to get cleaned up, and he said he had already checked out of his hotel room, and his flight was coming. It was, you know, he was trying to figure out things, and she invited him because I guess they were in the same hotel or whatever, in the airport or whatever, and she invited him to come there where he could freshen up or whatever. Right. So upon accepting that, he came up to her room and she showed him where the restroom was. He went in there to, you know, and she was on the phone doing a business call and trying to pick up around her unit because, you know, some women are like that. They're very casual in their personal space, and they throw their personal belongings all over the place. So she had underwear laying around and stuff. So she recognized that, and she was trying to straighten up a little bit while she's on her business call. And when he steps out, she gets off her phone call and she's telling him, you know, what, and he leaves, and she's embarrassed now because she's like, oh man, I had my personals laying all around. He was in the bathroom and he saw everything, you know, whatever. So that was, but he respected her space and everything. He just went in there to freshen himself up. So when you talk about, they were at the what was it, the opera or whatever, and then this airport situation, and there were circumstances that kept putting them in the same space. So there was a bit of familiarity coming about there, and they both acknowledged one another was attractive. That's not lost on anything. But again, they weren't trying to get at each other like that either. It was like, this was tasteful. It was tastefully written and tastefully acted out, I believe. You know, this was not some lust bucket type thing where it's like, oh, you know, and it turns out that the trauma bonding situation, the thing that led to them getting to this place here, things ended up happening, and they both felt a little bit different. Having had that experience, he goes back home, she goes back home. Thus, the title of the film, One Night Stand. Now, the interesting aspect of this story transpires when Max gets a call from the brother of Charlie, played by Glenn Plummer, his brother George.
Right.
Max is dying from AIDS. I mean, Charlie, excuse me, crossing the names up.
It was announced as HIV, but it became obvious that it turned to AIDS.
Yeah, he had contracted HIV, and it was full blown, and he had very short time to live, and so he tells his wife, you know, this was just inferred, of course. He catches an immediate flight out to New York to go and check on his friend. And this is he and Ming Na Wah as husband and wife together at a social part of the film where they're out and about. As you can see, the young Ming, she looks like she looks there, very young. When he goes back to New York and he comes across Charlie, Charlie's not doing well at all. And one of the things that he does is he speaks to the nurses about, you know, Charlie's state, and they let him know that, you know, he's very critical, you know. And this is where, as I suggested earlier to Drew when I was talking about the film with him, I said some of the best darn acting with Robert Downey Jr. and Wesley Snipes, man. This was like really amazing stuff here. Would you like to elaborate, Drew?
Let me explain why this particular scene, when Charlie and Max was speaking, hit home for me, because I knew someone that passed from that, and I wasn't around his final moments where he was critical like that. It was like I was around him. He was in the hospital. He was sick. And he was up and he was talking to all of us. Went back 2 days later. He was up and talking. And then we had planned to go see him on one day during the week. And his sister called us and said he was gone. But it was so strange because when we saw him, he didn't seem critical, but he wasn't, he wasn't well enough to leave the hospital. You understand? And to see him, Stormy, dude was bigger than me. He was about 6'6", and in his peak, he was well over 300 pounds. Brawler fella, and he caught a bad one. And back in the 90s, there was no medicine that could keep you up and about. It was like a slow death. It was deteriorating. By the time he left, the brother was like 130 pounds. It ate him from the inside out. So you gotta understand, when this film first came out in the 90s, we laid my boy to rest in 95. So to watch this, it kind of like struck a nerve. You know what I mean? Like I said, we wasn't around in his final moments, but I'm watching this scene, and the acting was just so like, whew. If you never knew what type, if you're typecasted, if you're young and all you know about Wesley Snipes is the action films, because you gotta understand, in the 90s, Wesley was getting a lot of work, even before Blade. Y'all remember one summer, Wesley was like in 3 movies. He was in Passenger 57. He was in that movie with Sean Connery. All of that, I think, was like the same year, right?
Yeah, Rising Sun.
Sun. He had like 3 films in the theater for a whole year. Wesley was like everywhere. He was getting work. And if you watch this film, the only action in this film is when he fought off the robbery, but you really get to see he really got in his bag, as it says.
Yeah.
He got in his bag, and it was tear shedding, and you also get to see Robert Downey Jr. get in his bag. These men are super talented, man.
Dude, listen, years later, they would be in the film opposite, once again, U.S. Marshals.
U.S. Marshals, they sure was.
The 2 of them, and in that film, turns out, if you guys haven't seen it, I won't spoil it for you, but Robert plays a very interesting character in that film.
Oh, Stormy, write this down.
Yeah.
We got to do a review of Tropic Thunder, please.
Yeah, I got that on the list already.
Thank you.
Got Tropic Thunder on the list already.
Yes, please.
But him playing ill, it was so realistic.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because of what's depicted in the hospital. It's all Robert.
Yep.
It's almost like method acting, and like he had some type of experience, like he knew, and he was just doing certain things. And there's this wonderful moment in exchange where he and Wesley are talking, and dude was asking him, he was like, is there anything I can do for you? Anything you need? And he says, nah, I don't need shit. It's like, he's like, but I'm frightened. He said, I'm frightened. And and then Wesley is like, listening to him, leaned in, and he says, if you could be here like between the hours of 4 and 5 in the morning or something like that, that's when it gets really bad. He's like, I can't sleep. He's like, I just lose it, And the way he conveys this to him is so humbling, and it's so fragile, because the man know he's dying, but he's trying to be strong in front of his friend. And when he asked that of him in that moment, that's that part that I was telling you that it hit me in the feels. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I had a very close friend who passed away. So I know what that's like. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, man. So that acting in that moment between the two of them, and this director, Mike Figgis, he directed the film Leaving Las Vegas. But he's not known as a director whose name is simply called upon. But man, did he get these efforts out of these two guys.
Yeah.
In that film. He got it. He and the film, I call it an independent, but it was released by New Line Cinema. And it was on the art film circuit. Not so much the independent film circuit, but I consider it an independent film because of the small release that it had. I recall when it first was released, I had been combing the weekend edition of the Tribune to figure out if there's any movies I want to go see. And there was a great article write-up on this film. And I forget the author of the article. It could have been Gene Siskel or Michael Wilmington, who are two film critics from this area who were very prominent during that time.
We know them well here.
Also prominent during that time, and Siskel and Ebert had a show and everything together.
Yes.
It wasn't Roger Ebert's article. But when I read this article that talked about this film and the way it was described, I said, man, I think I want to see this. I got to check this out. And I went to an art house theater that I had never been to before that showed small release films. I would later see a vampire film there years later, but it's funny because the films that I ended up seeing in this art house were that ilk, small release and everything. This film, even in that article that I remember reading, the review of it, it said that it was only released across a couple of hundred screens across the U.S. That's not a lot.
Right.
With a $23 million budget, this film brought in $2 million.
Only $2 million.
Yeah. So it tells you right there that 2.6 actually is what it brought in, the box office in the U.S. I don't have a list of what it made outside of the U.S., but only 2.6 million in the U.S.
I wonder. That's strange. Because this wasn't like well advertised out here, but it was in the select theaters.
Yeah, but see, that's what I'm saying, because how it came out, it wasn't given a broad release. Remember, I was combing through the paper and saw the review for it and decided to go see it. I'm sure there were other films that were planned that I would have just picked one to go see, at that time. But there was something about this, and I had read the synopsis and everything, and I said, this sounds interesting. And I went and saw it, and I am better for the experience. And see, this is one of the things that I want to stress about this and why we are bringing this to our audience. It's something that to be proud of. Embrace your culture, people. Embrace your culture. When we did the show on White Man's Burden, which was another independent film that didn't get a broad release, but because of the actors, Harry Belafonte and John Travolta, they were on the Oprah Winfrey Show when I heard about that film, because they were on there to promote the film. And I went to see that at the theater. I was better having seen it. Do you know that there still haven't been very many people who saw that film? And just like this film, I'm quite sure I like to take a poll of the people who are in our audience this evening, it says we have 12 viewers right now. Has anyone seen this film? Please put a 1 in the chat. Shout out to Champside. Put a 1 in the chat if you've seen this film before. And I'm only asking that because I'm trying to get a gauge of your cinematic experience of, you know, what you go to see. Because it's easy to go see a popcorn flick. It's easy to go see what's popular or, you know, word of mouth and all of that. But when you allow yourself to see something that, you know, of this ilk, again, it's an enrichment for a cinematic experience, especially, like I said, talking about these two men and their performances. Jimmy Bernard says he's seen it. That's wonderful.
Yeah, this was in select theaters out here. It wasn't, what I recall, in my radius, there's 3 1, 2, what it was, 1, 2, 3. There's 3 multiplex cinemas here. This wasn't, one of them wasn't built yet, to be fair. But, and one is closed down since then, to be fair. But this wasn't at any of them. But there was a smaller theater that only, and that theater's not around anymore either. There was a smaller theater not too far from me that only aired 3 screens. And that was the theater that the elderly went to. They played a lot of independent films. Mm-hmm. And then there was a place in Manhattan on the west side that had 2 screens. And they played a lot of the independent films. They have, you know, French films, but they'll have an American actor in the film. Last time I was down on that side of town, it was a few years ago, I was walking past the theater and I just looked up and I saw a poster of a movie. And who's on the poster? Jack Black. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, what more? And I forget the name of it. I'm like, what is this? You know, it wasn't in the multiplex. There wasn't even no commercials for this film. But a lot of these actors, what they do, well, you know, I would imagine, first of all these actors have agents, and they say, okay, you want me to star in this film? This is my price. Oh, we got you covered. Just come act. And oh, look at Theo Coop, man. Salute, Theo. Salute to you.
Yeah, salute to Theo. What's good with you, brother? Good to see you out here, man.
Yes, sir.
Welcome.
Yeah. You know, and salute to the regulars, y'all. Salute to y'all, man. Much love and appreciation, all of y'all. When you know, when you see when these people do these films, their money's right. They're getting paid. But sometimes, I don't want to call this a B movie in a disrespectful manner. What I will say is sometimes the movie that's not have the biggest limelight, the biggest advertising, those be the best films. Those be the best films. For example, there are some B movies that I enjoy. And these are the movies that don't make all the money now, but they become cult classics later.
Yeah.
You go back and watch them. These are, like, everyone talks about The Warriors, you know? I could think of a few off the top of my head. Big Trouble in Little China. As time went on, the legend of that movie became greater. You understand? This is one of those films, not on that level because of the action thing, but again, if you want to see acting in a story, you get sucked in. I don't want to call this a popcorn movie. I want to call this it's winter outside and you're chilling with your wife or you're by yourself. You get some tea, whatever, and you say, hey, what's this? You turn it on and you watch it because it's a story. There's some heart-wrenching in it, and the surprise ending. You're like, what the hell? Oh wow, okay. Very adulting. There was a lot of adulting in this film. It's something else I wanted to point out. Oh yeah, you do. I forgot. I gotta shout Theo Coop out when he does movie nights on his Discord. Yes. Posse, I saw that in the film. Stormy, we gotta talk about that.
Yeah, I got it down.
Man.
I got it down in the book.
Yes, Posse was great, man. Let me tell you, my boy worked at the movie theater. And he got us in for free to see that. We saw it twice in one day. Oh man, Posse was great. Derek Gaines, salute. Posse was great.
Salute Derek Gaines. Salute everybody in the chat.
Yeah, man.
Call your names out. Charge it to our head and not our heart, because we're just cooking on this great little film here.
Yes, sir. So this is one of those films you could definitely appreciate it. This is one of those films, and again, there's a couple things that hit home, but there's one thing I wanted to point out. The director did a drift to build the bridge as to why Max strayed away. Realistically, there's no excuse. Let's just say that. But he tried to throw something out there. And man, Theo said that was his first. Oh yeah, gotta put one. Yes, yeah, you gotta watch this one. You gotta watch this one.
Theo, and if you're just coming into the show, please go back and catch it from the beginning, after this, because we really laid the groundwork for what it's about. And though we're not finished discussing it, we're not going to reveal all the plot details, because we do encourage people to check out something like this. When I asked the chat who's present, who have seen it, we only had one person to acknowledge that they've seen the film. So again, there's so much junk out there, so much noise, so much clutter. Understand that when Drew and I are recommending something on this show, it's worth that. You know what I mean? And because we take the time out. This is truly living up to what our title of our show is, Nerds on Culture. When you can go to the heart of the cinematic experience and get something and be better as a result of having experienced it. See, that's what that's all about. This film and the actors who participated in it, it's really an outstanding thing, and it's looking back on it and see that it made far under its budget. I believe if it had more endorsement, if it had more advertising and had a greater screening across the US, it would have done better. But like I said, Drew, I said maybe 300 screens. That may be far too many. This was on a limited, it was playing only in one cinema, the Art House Cinema here in Chicago. It didn't play anywhere else. It wasn't at none of the multiplexes, it was at one art house theater. And that theater wasn't far from my home, and I was able to drive to it and and see it. But in fact, I think this was my first film that I saw at that particular art house theater, and I started to look for more films at that because I enjoyed it so much. You see how that can broaden your horizon. It's like you go in and you're like, I haven't tried this before. Next thing you know, you become a regular, because it's like the experience was that absorbing. So
can I make a suggestion, Theo? Now listen to this, and we got to cover this too. We didn't cover Unfaithful, did we?
No.
Brother, you saw it, right?
Yeah, of course. I got it in my collection.
Brother. Hey, Theo, let me tell you something. If you've never seen Unfaithful, that's going to get you enraged. That's going to get you enraged. Stormy, when we cover that, bro, she had no business, bro. All right, I'm not even going to go there. I'm telling you. Theo, if you never saw Unfaithful with Richard Gere, brother, you're going to do a 3-hour stream on that movie alone, bro. Oh my God. You never saw Unfaithful? Bro.
Yeah, man.
Bro, you're going to be watching that film like this. Bro, you're gonna get mad. You're gonna get mad. You are gonna get mad. Everything that, because that came out in 90, what? Around the same time, 97, 98?
Yeah.
Bro, everything that we talk about here is done in that movie.
Yep.
Everything, Manosphere, everything is done in that film. She had no business. You're gonna watch that in 2002. Okay, you're gonna watch that film like this, and it's gonna get worse and worse and worse and worse. And the worst case scenario happens. I was literally watching that film like, yo, what the? No, she not. And she does. And then you're watching like, no, he's not. And he does. And it's like, oh my God. Yo, the cliffhanger in that film, bro, I ripped the DVD out my goddamn DVD player and I put it in the box and I put it in my drawer and I never touched it again. That goddamn DVD got cooties. I ain't been that angry watching the film since Last American Version. And you know what they hit us with at the end of the Last American Version? You remember, Stormy? I did my best, but I guess my best wasn't good enough. I was like, oh my God, they hit me with that. And then the movie ends. I was like, yo, no. Oh my God.
More than that song was that scene where dude was looking at her and she was in the room with old boy.
Bro.
And looked at him. And then they closed the door.
And she smiled. You remember her face? That deep, she was a demon. She was a demon.
That was like
demon.
If he was a cigarette and she took that last draw off of it, threw it on the ground, bro, and mashed her foot on top of it like this, putting it out on the ground, that's what she did to him.
Bro, now understand, I saw that. By the time I watched that, Stormy, I was about maybe 12. And I was watching with my older brother. I remember my brothers looking at me saying, you see? My brother was 17. I was 12. My brother said, you see? This is why you don't treat him a certain way. And I remember at 12 years old, I was watching that movie and getting mad. I'm like, yo, he did all of that for her. She still did this? He said, I'm telling you, you can't trust all of them. I was so annoyed. But yeah, Theo, unfaithful. And you can spin the block and watch this movie we're talking about tonight. One Night Stand. Watch One Night Stand first.
And Jimmy Bernard says he had to drive 30 miles to watch this film.
Oh, wow.
So you see, that's what I'm trying to tell you. It didn't have a general release. It had a limited release.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, you know, even though it had the budget that it had, they weren't necessarily looking for it to make back a certain profit. I think they were just trying to get that story out. Because as we go back to what I said originally, that film was somewhat ahead of its time.
It was.
With a lot of the story characteristic points and the existence of certain characters in that film. We've already talked about, and you broke it down. Back then, we knew the community that Robert's character Charlie was from, and that was called the gay community at that time. There was no LGBTQ, XYZ, all of that at that time. There was just what that was noted as. And that woman who was a colleague of Max's, trying to invite herself into his room. But she looked like she went both ways. You know, we're talking about certain things. Ming Na Wei's character as his wife, she was someone that was very demanding and like, you know, like, let's talk about that for a moment.
Yes, that's what I was going. The director was in the writing was very clever. They built, they kind of like gave you an answer as to why Wesley kind of strayed. Now let me go on record saying this. Shakira, salute, Queen. J-Man, salute. And if we miss you in the chat, know that we love you. There's no excuse for stepping out. but the director was very clever in what he built. After they had that tragic situation, well, almost tragic situation with the robbery, and they end up back at the hotel, and they sleep with each other. And
salute, Chiquila. Thank you for stopping in.
so they sleep with each other. Do you remember the camera work? Nothing was vulgar. It was intimate. It was lovemaking. It was slow. It was passionate. There was a lot of freeze framing. There was like noise in the back, like soothing, like it wasn't like wow chicka wow wow music. It was like they were making love. It was passionate, right? So after that happens, everyone feels guilty. He flies back to LA. The scene where he sleeps with his wife, totally different. It was unenjoyable. He was just doing it to get out the way. She was so demanding in the bedroom. Go in a circle. Go this way, harder. Wait, no, don't stop. I'm almost done. And he's like, hush, you're gonna wake up the kids. She literally said, F the kids, I'm coming. She literally said that. And I'm watching Stormy. The kids are still up. I had to turn it down because I was like, oh shoot. I paid the damn mortgage here. I had to turn it down. You know, I'm like, damn. And it was like, she's so demanding. So what the director did was, he was saying that this is a man that is very responsible. He has a family, loves his wife, but he's grown tired of the demands of her and in the bedroom. And they were more like roommates than a husband and wife.
Now, do you see why he smoked?
He was stressed. He was very stressed. What is this? What the hell is this? Why'd that come on? That was strange. Yeah, he was stressed. He was very stressed. And there was lovemaking. And then there was sex. And when the audience is watching that, I was like, damn, that's what it is for him. You do it, but it wasn't enjoyable for him. And the director made sure you saw that. Now, as a man, you know, you're like, did he even finish? It made you wonder that. It made you wonder why it was so passionate when he was in New York. But it was just, you know, nudie flick when he was with his wife, and the vulgarity came from her. He said, hush, you're gonna wake the kids. She literally said, up the kids, I'm coming. I said, oh man, god damn.
Now let's get to the brother. Max was more of a brother to Charlie,
right,
than his blood brother.
Right.
When his brother showed up at the hospital,
what did you notice?
Rubber gloves and all.
Yes. 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 It was disrespectful.
Wesley character Max, he asked the nurses, you know, because he had days to live. He said, can I bring him some weed? And they was like, of course not. You can't bring him weed in the hospital. Man, Max showed up with this big ass split.
That thing was the size of a cigar, man. And you heard what Charlie said? He said, I have no antibodies. It's not going to matter anyway. Just bring it. Bring the weed, man.
Dude, they were partying in his room. Remember? They were having a darn good time, man. It was, again, and Robert was enjoying. It's like he was into the role. It was a great moment for that, you know, the way they displayed that, and even how they showed they showed Max when he brought something to the nurses for taking care of his friend. You know, a subtle, gentle touch. But anyone who's had someone in crisis in the hospital,
Yeah.
and has been that person to be that forbearing, to appreciate what they do for your loved ones. Because
Right.
believe it or not, there are more people like Charlie's brother, George, who are very insensitive and got rubber gloves on and can't wait to get up out of there. You know, let's get this over already. I'm serious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is something where you get a chance to see George and Karen here together as husband and wife when they went out for sushi, because George invited Max and his wife, you know, for this. And this was the first time that Max and Karen were brought face to face since their one night stand. So you can imagine how uncomfortable this
That was funny, man.
meeting was. You know, it's like just to be able to sit in the presence of one another with your spouses, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing what transpired. But Mimi, who was Max's wife, did you notice that the chatterbox that she was and the insensitive dupe that George was, there was a connection between those two idiots.
That's right.
It
That's
was
right.
like that there was a connection between those two idiots that they just found themselves to be like relatable. So much to the point that Mimi was just talking and, yeah, Max, isn't that right? He was like, no. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's
Bro.
talk about it, bro. Talk about it.
Like I said, clever directing. But what I call the cross connection that was built here. You got to understand, Max's wife, she was basically bossy. She grown very comfortable in her marriage, and not saying that she needs to be quiet and speak when spoken to. No, she was a mother. They had 2 kids, you know, but she was just bossy. She got comfortable being outspoken, and she's, like you said perfectly, she's a chatterbox, to the point where she talked a little too much, you know. And oh, this is what I want to point out. She had an issue with Max expressing himself how he expresses himself. Remember, after the party, she got pissed off when they were at home. And this is a very important scene. And again, clever directing, clever writing. They were together as a couple, and there weren't like no real like problems, but you can tell they were drifting apart, and he was just sick of her. She had a lot of masculine energy, man. She had a lot of masculine energy. And when he got into it with the other gentleman, and they had that little like sneaky condescending back and forth, when they got back to their house, she was pissed with Max. She always says he's over analytical, he's too artsy in his explanations, but what was disrespectful was how he is made them a millionaire. She calls it over analytical, and he's always overthinking and giving these long extended answers, and she found it corny. But in his mind, it's like, Bitch, we are where we are in life because I think this way. How dare you say that you have a problem with how I think? And as a black man, I'm looking at that interaction on the film. And again, as I watch these movies, I put myself in these situations. It's like, man, all of that success is happening because of Max, the character Max. And here comes this white man with the blonde hair, blue eyed, and he talked like this. And, you know, and he was talking at Wesley. And they never honed in on Max, played by Wesley Snipes. They never honed in on the racial aspect of it. But as a person of color, you know what that was about.
Right.
He was talking at him, and it's like, motherfucker, we here because of me. This is all me right here. Don't talk to me crazy. I run this show. And that's what the rift was. He was talking at him like he was his equal. No, you're not my equal there, buddy. I run this show. So then when they get home, his wife is like, yo, why you acting like this? Why you doing this? Why you doing that? And it's like, you know, that's the rift. That's the disconnect. He had to defend himself in that. He can't just kowtow and just, oh man, yo, okay, yeah, whatever. You can't brush that off. And that's what she didn't understand. So then she nitpicked at him. He nitpicked at her. And then she said, oh, well, you know, all of those women all over you, what, are you effing one of them? He was like, what? Well, what about you with the dress? And now they get into a little argument. And then what does she do, Stormy? She slapped him like 2 times. And then what did he do? He raised his hand at her and she flips and he said, whoo, hoo, hoo, hoo. That's just what he said. He pointed at her, he said, whoo. Like, you almost had me. I was about to get you. And then he went and he sat down and the scene ended, right? And then the words came up 1 year later. Now Charlie is terminally ill and they're back in New York. But I like how the director laid that groundwork because they wanted you to wonder, since that night, what happened between that night and 12 months from then? The relationship had to have changed. Had to have changed. So they go see Charlie, and I think a year has passed since he's seen old girl. So, you know, absence makes the heart grow fonder. So that whole year, all he's been doing is thinking about that time he had that one night stand, hence the name of the movie. Yeah, I'm telling you, you could piece this stuff together like Lego, man. You could piece it together like Lego. This film, to me, it's a must-see. Mac of the South, salute. Eric Jordan, my brother, salute. Cameron Fields in the building, salute.
Yeah.
This is a must-see film,
man. This film, please, if you guys, whomever out there has not seen this film, see it this week. Yeah. Based on us talking about it like we have, we're not going to give all the details on it because you need to have something for yourself with the experience. But just know that the performances by the lead characters are outstanding, particularly Wesley and Robert Downey Jr. I mean, this is some great stuff here. We're going to go into the recommendation of how you can acquire it. It's on Amazon Prime, right, Drew?
Amazon Prime. I paid $4 for it.
It's on Amazon Prime for those of you who have Amazon Prime. You can check it out there. I have it in my collection. I think the DVD is actually out of print, but I have the DVD of the film. Very proud film to have in the collection. And again, I put this up there with White Man's Burden, that kind of film, because it is something for the culture, which is what this show is about and why we're talking about it. So with this being said, we're going to get ready to close things out because Drew has got pep talk coming up and he's got to get ready for that. Final thoughts on this film, brother.
Must see. I want Cameron Fields to watch this film.
Kamaran, if you haven't seen this film, doing what you do professionally, my goodness, this film would be a quick study. And I wouldn't be surprised that after watching it, if you haven't seen it, that you would take elements of that film and do some content on it, because when you talk about the social construct of relationships, the subliminal, the psychological, and everything that comes spiritual, everything that is in here. It is in here. Am I right, Drew?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want you to watch it. And like I said, man, this is an underappreciated film. This was acting at its finest, man. I don't know. Oh man, that's what I meant to ask you. Was anybody nominated for anything in this film? I don't know.
Let me double check.
Yeah,
real quick.
Because this was one of those ones. This was one of those ones, man. This is definitely one of those ones. Great film. I think this film was great. You know, I like to hone in on acting and things like that. I do appreciate this film. I really do. And that scene when he was going back and forth with his, I can't even call that guy his co-worker. I want to call it his work rival. And they were talking to each other very condescending. And it was like very well written. Very well written. And as a black man, that's what that scene was about. Because dude was like really talking down to him, and Wesley was just fed up with it. And when he got home, his wife, of course, did not understand why he was doing that. And that was another disconnect. That was a disconnect.
It said the film had mixed reviews. And as far as legacy and accolades, it says that when ranking the 59 films of Robert Downey Jr. in 2021, Kyle Wilson of Screen Rant placed One Night Stand at 47th out of 59 films for Robert. He said, this drama really doesn't have the bite or sensuality one might hope, but it does boast some extremely good performances, most of all Downey, who brings a soulful sensitivity to the potentially cynical and awards-baiting role of the sick friend. It also goes on to say that Wesley Snipes won the Volpe Cup for Best Actor at the 54th Venice International Film Festival. So Wesley won an award for his performance in this film, and you just heard that critic speak about Roberts. I keep telling you guys, when we say certain things, please pay attention, because we're very earnest with this and what we do. But yeah, so that's that. Anything else you got, bro?
Another slam dunk, man. Love Mondays. We're nerds and we love it. Man. Can't wait to see what we're doing next week, man. And I'm gonna slide over to Pep Talk and get this stuff ready.
Yeah, for those of you who are going to still be around on the airwaves, please take the positive energy over to Drew Titan's channel for Pep Talk, Painful Excellence podcast. And I think he dual streams on his other channel as well, Drew Titan. So, yeah, man, this was a great one. I really appreciate you rocking it out with me and catching up on it so we could really talk about it. I think we did this one justice. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, good brother. I'll talk to you in a minute.
All right, man. Peace to you.
Peace.
All right. So with that being said, we're going to get ready to wrap things up. But before we get up out of here, we're going to hear from my man, the Focus Ball. Yeah. You see, this is how we do. We support one another out here.
Get ready to take your striking game to the next level with the Focus Ball. Dramatically improved footwork, timing, head movement, hand-eye coordination, reflex, and overall fight IQ. It's lightweight and extremely portable, so you can train every time, everywhere. When you don't have a coach to do mitt work, get a Focus Ball. When you don't have a heavy bag to hit, get a Focus Ball. When you don't have a sparring partner, get yourself a Focus Ball. And when you just want to have fun punching and kicking, get a Focus Ball. When you train with the Focus Ball, you train your eyes and your brain to read punches so that you can hit and not get hit, making this very simple device a must-have for all combat sports athletes and enthusiasts alike. So if you want to take your striking game to the next level, don't wait. Get the focus ball now.
Yes. And so this brings us to the end of another Nerds show. Yeah. I really appreciate each and every one of you out there that joined us this evening, smashed the like button. Please go and check this film out. You will be enriched as a result. We'll be back next week, Monday, for another outstanding show. So hoping that you will join us again. I want to say peace to everybody out there and shout out to the mighty LDBC. Thank you for watching and tuning in.
do you think of Negroes?
As good as any white man.